What is up, guys? Today I come to you yet with another weekly review of Days, and we're at episode 12, so we're halfway through the mark. It has not ended. We're getting 25 episodes if anybody is unsure. But in this week's episode, it was a pretty tearful one at the most because we saw a lot of crying in this week's episode. And it's not crying tears of joy, it was actually out of sadness and frustration. Now, I think a lot of people were betting on it already, but some of us were trying to be hopeful, like myself, that Seiseki would have won the game. But like in most sports anime, the main protagonist team loses, and they have to at least one or two losses before there is actual progression on certain individuals concerning their character. So Seiseki lost to Sakurai, so it was 2-1. Of course, when I said that, I was one of those hopeful people that they would have got like at least a tie, and then there would have been like an overtime, and then we will determine from then who would have won. But of course, they're not going to stretch the story out that far. They do have a limited amount of time to do so, so that would have not been possible, and it would have been stretching too far. So of course Seiseki won. What happened was Tsukamoto, even though he was about to go kick the ball, it actually bounced off the pole, and the game was over. Sakurai won. They lost to their rival team once again. But the thing is, what in a lot of sports anime, what they do is they give our main team the redemption, that episode, that redemption episode that they will face off against with their rivals, the ones that beat them, that first official team that beats them, and allows them to face up against them a second time, at least in the anime, from what we see from our perspective. Of course, there's always a history behind the storyline, but of course, from what we see on the screen, they get that second chance. So I do think, if that's how the story is going to play out, I do think that this will not be the first time we will see these two teams facing up again. But either way, knowing that, Kasahara, he worked hard, and even though he never got to be put on the starting lineup, which consisted of 17 members, 11 on the field and 6 as substitute, he was still there to support his team. And like, how will you feel? Because, in this episode he left, and really he wanted to be in that starting lineup so that he can play, and this will be his last play before he left to go and take care of his sick grandparents. So he had to leave in this episode, but when we saw him leave, and he was crying as well in this episode, you would think like, this guy seriously worked hard for 3 years. And possibly, I think it was also mentioned, but I don't know if it was really affirmed, that he did not get to really play on the field as much. And then you have this complete newbie. It's not like Tsukamoto had experience in the past and stopped for a while and came back to play. He's a complete newbie. He's completely new to the whole soccer world. And then he replaces you on the team. And you, as a person who's been training, practicing day in and day out with the captain to get better at your skills, and then someone else takes the place that you worked so hard for, possibly even more than the other person, is frustrating, but you have no choice but to support them. And it's not like he held ill intention towards Tsukamoto, and he left knowing that he was not able to play his final game, and that he's going to quit soccer competitively. So you really felt for Kasahara senpai. And I mean, there was a part of the episode where Mizuki was dressed in a white suit, so that was very funny. Mizuki is all in his own world. He was dressed in a white suit, but he did make a promise that he will make this team a better team. But really, the highlight of this episode was Kazuma. Tsukamoto was later in the episode, but it was Kazuma that was really the highlight of this episode. Ever since we got introduced to Kazuma, the first time you ever saw him, you would have thought he was like that typical cold-hearted jerk that was really good at soccer and didn't care about anybody else because he was better than everybody else. But he completely flipped the switch once we started seeing who his character really was. And to see how he gave us a complete new look into his character, his overall personality, like from this guy that's always quirky and this just funny guy, and then we see him actually break down in frustration and in sadness, because for the very first time, he's truly enjoyed soccer. We saw through like past through flashbacks where he was on soccer teams, and of course he didn't enjoy soccer as much. He just felt like, I'm just playing this because I'm really good. What's the point of passing to other people because they're not as good? He was like a one man player when he was on his previous soccer teams, and that's why he couldn't enjoy soccer as much. But the minute he stepped in Seiseki and stepped into the soccer team and see that all these different personalities, all these different characters, senpais that don't listen to each other, senpais that fight with each other, everybody doing their own thing, but the fact that they all come together to play this one single sport, this place, Seiseki soccer team, was like a second home to him. And the fact that, they put so much effort into this game, he put so much effort into something that he never thought he would be able to do, so long as, even though he's good, it wouldn't matter. But the fact that he gave it his all, he went up against opponents that actually gave him a challenge, and to see that they did not win at the end of the day, all of that came bundling down on him, because it was the first time he ever experienced such a feeling. To see him actually kick the ball in frustration, him breaking down and crying, was a new highlight into Kazuma's character, and a new light into his chapter. So this was an episode that also gave Kazuma that character growth, and we're going to continuously see him growing throughout the entire series. And of course, Tsukamoto, he's taking all the pressure upon himself. He felt like, it's my fault we didn't win the game. If only I didn't kick the ball into the pole and it bounced back. He was being very harsh on himself, and it took up to Ubukata to knock some sense into him, but also being very sensible towards his demeanor. And she gave him the advice. She told him of her time, like the first time we heard her, she wanted to be a writer, and she gave up, and she failed so many times. But she said, despite all of that, you have to keep getting up, because if you stop halfway through, nothing will be accomplished. And even though you lost the game, it was never your fault. It came to the point where Tsukamoto was pushing himself so hard that he was not eating and he was not sleeping. So he just practiced day in and day out, because he felt like he dragged the team and he thought it was all his fault. But she put the sense back into him to show him that it's okay to cry. There's times where you will not succeed. Actually, you'll fail many times. For Tsukamoto's character specifically, we'll probably see him failing more times than we'll see him succeeding. But that all adds up to his character, and what we hopefully will see in 2 years' time, that he will be in the same position as Mizuki or even higher. So the episode ends off on a funny note. Despite all the tears and the crying and everything, it ends on a funny note where Tsukamoto cried himself to sleep on Ubukata's shoulder, and we see the 3 first years, and they're like shocked to see the scene, and Ubukata is plotting to bodily damage all 3 of them, and it ends off on that note. So it ends off on a lighthearted note, but it just goes to show this is a new chapter for Seiseki. It's a new chapter for Tsukamoto and Kazuma, and it's just going to continuously grow on their characters. We're going to see a lot of growth from a lot of characters, and hopefully we get more into character introductions for the rest of the members on the team. So it's just another chapter for Seiseki as they go on their journey to become the top soccer team in the high school division in Japan. So if you saw this week's episode of Days, episode 12, please tell me in the comment section below on how you felt about it. What were your thoughts on Kazuma and Tsukamoto in this chapter? Are you hoping to see Kasahara for one more time in this series as it still continuously play? And what are your future thoughts for Seiseki as a whole, as a team? The links are in the description box, so you guys go check that out. And I'm Kimmy Chan of Anime Legends Podcast, and I will see you guys later. Bye!